The Ancients' World. Chapter 281, Talks of War. The war is coming to Belvia, and there isn't anything they can do to stop it. Queen Eleanor and the Dryad people have been waiting for this for a very long time. I'm going to try and guide her in the arts of war, but I'm not a genius strategist. I know how to formulate plans, attack, defend. However, there are rulers out there that outclass me, one of those rulers being Gregory. I don't know if he's going to be helping Belvia, and if he is, that's going to be serious trouble. He's highly regarded as a master of tactical combat, and I know I'll lose if I go against him. The meeting is going great, and now that our generals are communicating, there is no longer a reason to be here. Not in the tent, that is. I stand up, and I look towards my wife. Tessa has gotten some sleep since we're left Zenith. Not being in a place she's constantly getting attacked has helped her mentally. It's also helped me too. Seeing my wife begin to look better eases my heart. The thought of Belvia being the one that has done this to her replaces that ease with a burning fury. I walk over to her and hold out my hand. She gives a tired and weak smile. She reaches up and takes it. I hold her hand, and we walk side by side as the meeting continues. We exit the large tent and head towards our private royal tent. I open the opening for her, and she walks in. I follow her in, and I take a breath of relief. We'll let the generals do what they do, so let's get some actual rest. I walk towards the bed, and I sit down on edge. Tessa joins me, and I wrap one arm around her. She leans her head on my shoulder and relaxes. The bags under her eyes are beginning to get better, but they're still there. I run my fingers through her white hair, hoping to get her to relax more. Maybe even fall asleep. Jackson, she slowly says my name in a tired voice. When this is all over, will the attacks on me finally stop? Who's to say that Belvia is the only one that'll try to take me or kill me? Ever since I got this power from Slayer Zern's feather, my life has been in constant danger. I grit my teeth and hold in my fury. As a man, I want my wife to feel safe in our own home. She doesn't feel safe and is worried that after all this, it'll only continue with other kingdoms. I don't know what to say. While King Jackson and Queen Tessa are in their private tent, Queen Eleanor has decided to stay and watch the discussions. After all, she is new to ruling, and she wants to learn as much as she can about organizing troops, setting goals, and utilizing the chain of command. Many generals are talking to one another right now, discussing plans and where to move forces. Queen Eleanor is learning a lot in this meeting. The thing being, you can't win a war alone. She's silent and taking in every word that's spoken. I clasp my hands together and listen as two generals from my army and Jackson's speak. We can combine our forces and set up blockades in these three areas, freeing up movements for the 12th and 21st divisions. That way, we can move our troops to the locations that King Jackson marked without the risks of ambush. This is the chain of command in action. King Jackson gave the order to capture specific targets. Now his generals can talk and discuss with each other about how to get these targets. Once they're done with these discussions, the officer in the room right now will all receive individual orders, taking on separate tasks. This is going to be a problem, though. One of the generals points to an area on the map labeled as hazardous. Due to the constant use of magical crystals in Belvia, once they're broken and can't be reused, they dump them here. While they aren't dangerous to us or the environment, it has attracted large numbers of monsters, powerful ones too, hoping to feel on the tiny scraps left in the crystals. I don't know what magic crystals are. Only that they were made long after our people were cursed. While this area is going to prove dangerous, maybe we can use that to our advantage. I raise my eyebrow at the prospect as one of the several generals speaks. Everyone is waiting for him to elaborate. If we know this information, Belvia does too. We can use this if we clear the monsters out of the area and dispose of the magic crystals. We'll have a great foothold to move into the kingdom deeper. They won't check on the place due to it being filled with monsters. The idea is a good one, but many soldiers will die in the process. The horn of the forest can be of some use here, and this is a perfect chance to test the item. I know just what we can use to complete this task. I decide to speak, and everyone turns their attention to me. We haven't used the horn of the forest yet, and I'd love to see the item in action. We'll use the horn of the forest to clear out this area. My idea is well received by many in the room. The generals begin talking and moving to different subjects fast. Solving problems at a rate, I wouldn't. It goes to show the difference between us. I'm learning more than I hoped to, and while I don't like the thought of sending my troops and people to die, it's something that everyone wants revenge against the Belvian kingdom. After the trade routes are locked down, we'll shift the 38th and 39th divisions to the city of Greenwater. Taking the port will guarantee that the forces of Belvia suffer from lack of supplies. I understand the concept. Cutting off valuable resources that sustain armies is going to be detrimental for the enemy. After a stretch of time, they'll run out of everything. A new tactic I've just learned. As the meeting continues in the tent, Belvia themselves are having a war council in the capital. In comparison, their forces aren't as great as the combined efforts of Zenith and the Dryads. However, they have magical technology other kingdoms don't have, mages with magic exclusive to the Belvian kingdom. The war is going to be anything but swift and easy for Zenith and the Dryads. King Herman is sitting in an extravagant chair as they look at the war map. They're discussing key locations that need to be defended. I never imagined that my time as king would turn out like this. The actions of my kingdom's forefathers have come to bite me, the sins of so long ago bursting forth. We knew of the curse on the Dryads, and we could have lifted it. I decided that it was unwise because once free, they'd still want revenge and war. I did what I thought was best for my people, for my family. I have flashbacks to the day that Slayer Zirn entered the royal palace and threatened my family and me. Grabbed my precious daughter by the throat. Never has a king been so blatantly attacked, too openly threatened. What could I do? He's someone whose life is much more valuable than mine and my family. It's humbling, you know, to be a king, and think yourself at the top of the world. Only to be shown that you're nothing but dust in the wind when compared to real importance. My king, we're going to have to give up 2 of the trade routes. Sacrificing 2 of them will allow us to reinforce the others enough. At least until the project is complete. I'm brought out of my thoughts. I look at the man who spoke to me, and I look down at the map. I sigh at the realization. There is a big chance we won't even win this war, and I'm pondering a full surrender to save the lives of my people. I ordered the attacks on the Queen of Zenith, but I was assured that no one would find out. Gregory said that it was impossible. Gregory and Jackson enemies, yet Gregory won't help me, and instead, has left me to fight along after convincing me to fight. I figure something out at this moment. Gregory played me and has caused this war. If that's what he wants, that's what he'll get, a war. I'll be sure to tell Jackson who it really was before I die. Chapter 282, Getting Close. While kings and generals speak of war, Sarah and Sally are still traveling. The trip passes, and the distance is covered. They're getting closer to the southern border of the Elven Kingdom. Hayley is already meeting up with Jasmine and is likely on her way to the border herself. The night is falling on this final day, and that means it's time to camp. Sarah brings Sally and him down, and he sets up camp and a fire. The sun is quickly setting, and with it, the temperature is dropping. The two sit close to the fire and relax. Knowing that tomorrow they're reaching the border. Sally cuddles closer to me, and I wrap my wing around her. Even though she is unaffected by the cold due to her class, she still likes the sensation of being wrapped in my wing. I don't mind it either. We're camping in an open field in the middle of nowhere. The sky is clear, and the stars are shining. The earth could never give a view like this. Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Sally asks me a question and breaks the calm silence. I look down and at her. She curled up in my wing and is staring into the fire. I can try and get really philosophical with my answer, but I don't think that's needed. Right and wrong, it can't be applied to your want for revenge after everything you've been through. You have every right to do this. This is my personal opinion. Something that I believe. Sally is entitled to vengeance and has the right to pursue it. The rights and wrongs of society don't concern us, cause society never cared about Sally. She stays silent at my words, and I can see on her face there is a lot she wants to talk about. She'll speak when she's ready. I think it's my turn to share some history on my life, get her mind off whatever's causing her to have these thoughts. You want to hear a story? I ask her as I look into the fire too. She lets me know with a grumble. Before we came to this world, us players had visited other worlds. Some of them are similar to this world. I'm talking about how I've, and many other billions have played other Vermeer pages. The time spent on them, in a sense, they are different worlds. She raises her head and looks at me. Having a hard time believing it. I've played other games before I started playing the Ancients world. It gave me the chance to travel back in time. To be different. We could come and go in these different worlds as we pleased. Spend as much time as we wanted. This world is different cause we can't return to our own. She's fully invested in my new topic now. In these worlds, I was a different person every time. I'd be a mage in one and an archer in another. This was before all of this. I use my hand to indicate everything around us. In these worlds, I wasn't this powerful. These were the games I played before I started playing the Ancients world. How is that possible? There is no creature or god that could come and go between worlds as they wished. She slaps me with some logic, and she's right. We made these worlds so we can play in them, so in spirit, they were never real. Everyone thought that the Ancients world was the same. She's waiting for me to continue, and I smile at my success in distracting her from the depressing thoughts in her head. I should pick up where I left off. I take a breath and prepare more. You're right, Sally. We didn't go to worlds that already existed. We went to the ones that we had made. In a sense, you could call us gods, but we're far from it. We're not really gods cause we didn't actually create life. I can't find a better description for it, though. This world was thought to have been created by us. The supposed designers claimed that it was. But they lied to us, and we came to learn that it's much more than that. She's speechless. I don't know if she believes the story, but it's the truth. Sally and I have grown very close, and I've shared the secrets that I carry with her. The fact I'm a player, and the differences between us. She has accepted it all and never shown any signs of leaving me, but hearing this paints me in a new light. That's some of the history of my people and how we came to be here. There is more if you want to hear it. She tilts her head back towards the fire. She shakes it, having heard enough for one night. My thoughts drift to Hayley and where she's at right now. Her schedule is tighter than ours. While Sarah and Sally camp out for the night, Hayley is just arriving her the city her friend is in. Jasmine is someone that Hayley has been traveling with for some time, and after growing close enough, she got a quest from Jasmine. The quest led to the same place where Sally had spent most of her young life as a slave. Jasmine was a slave at a different point in time, long after Sally escaped. Hayley is coming all this way to tell Jasmine that she got revenge for her and that they have a new mission to go on. I look ahead and see the small town that Jasmine decided to tell me the story about her past. Jasmine gave me the quest once we arrived here and when I accepted it. She said she couldn't come out of fear. Once I was finished, I was to return here. Now that I'm done, it's time to see my friend again. I walk into the town. It's one without walls and barely any guards. I paid for her to stay at an inn for a month, but it's been less than a week. I see the inn ahead, and I smile. I walk towards it and enter. There is a party and drunks having a good time. I walk up to the bartender, and I remove my hood. She recognizes me as Jasmine's friend. I didn't expect to see you so soon. I take it that your mission was a success. I nod my head, and the bartender prepares a drink for me. A toast to you then. For ending a blight on all life. I raise the tankard in celebration with her, and I chug the alcohol. I slam the tankard down and wipe my lips. She's upstairs in her room. She had too much to drink and passed out. I laugh cause that sounds just like Jasmine. She's a party girl. I turn and make my way towards the stairs. I climb them, and the noise of the party fades. I learned that inns have their wall magically enchanted to help drown out noise for their sleeping customers. I bet Sarah knew that long ago. I see the same door, and I walk to it. I gently knock on it, and I hear footsteps coming towards the door. It slowly opens, and I see Jasmine poke her eye through. As soon as she recognizes it's me, the door swings open, and she leaps into my arms for a hug. I'm a few inches taller than her. She's shorter than the average woman. We stop hugging, and she pulls me into the room. You're back way sooner than expected. Does that mean you did it? I make my way towards the table and take a seat. I look at her and smile. I nod my head, and I get a notification from the system marking the quest's end. Looking at the quest can wait. She's stiff for a few seconds, but I watch her fall to her knees and begin to cry. I can believe it's over. Those bastards are finally dead. I watch and my heart aches. I've never had an experience with sexual violence. So I can't relate to being a slave in the slightest. All I can do is try to be the best friend I can be to her. She looks at me, and my heart cracks. She's smiling and crying at the same time. I stand up from my chair and walk over to her. I get on the ground, and I place my hand on her back. It's over, Jasmine, they're gone for good. She lets the pain out as I say those words. She wails and screams out, letting everything she's bottled up over the years out. She hugs me again, and I hug her back. Doing all I can to make this better. Chapter 283, The Detour. I force my eyes open as the sun shines through the tent. I roll on my side, and I lay my arms across Sally. As I do, she takes it and wraps herself around my arm. We stayed up late last night talking. I'm still tired, and I wouldn't mind sleeping in. We've been sticking to a tight schedule this trip, spending the majority of the days flying. Since we're so close to the border, there's no reason not to take some time to get extra rest. I close my eyes again and think about something that I still need to learn more about the dice of Wayland. I have them, and they've granted more power to the witness. However, the original reason I got them was that the system said they'll be important for the future. I don't know the true purpose of having the dice. While it holds nearly endless information, it's not possible to find all the items that it has information on. That would be counterproductive. So, why did the system send me on a quest to get the dice in the first place? They have to have some separate functions. Something that gives it a purpose. 'Cause right now, it's not really doing anything. All it's doing is making the witness slightly better. Perhaps I just have to wait. Sometimes that's all we can really do. My thoughts drift to another subject. This time, it's my divine item Fenrir's whistle. I've only used it once, and not much has happened with Fenrir as of late. He said that he was going to Overworld to speak with the rest of the gods. That day the old gods were announced to be returning. He told me he's going to be busy for a while. The same day I got my divine mana aura, mysteries that I can't solve right now. Events are playing out. Changes are occurring. I do blame myself for the current state of humanity, but sometimes I deny it and say it's other people's responsibility. That's my fear of responsibility talking. The amount of pressure on me is great. People think I'm a saver. They think I'm here to fight their battles and save their people. When I'm the original reason that all this is happening to Gaia. In my old future, there was no monster war. There were no old gods. Humanity wasn't transported here, and the other half that didn't make it died. None of that happened last time. The common denominator is me and what I've done. If people learn about how I've messed with time, how I've changed the future, they'll deem me the greatest threat to life on Gaia. It's completely reasonable to say that too. In a sense, it's true. I am a threat to all life on Gaia. Every single decision I make causes major shifts. All the things I've taken for myself have affected billions. I'll have to accept responsibility for my actions one day, but another part of me says I'll never do that. 'Cause it isn't my fault, but it is. I'm full of contradictions, just like a normal person. I'm pulled from my internal debating as I feel Sally squirm a bit. I open my eyes as she flutters hers open. She stares into mine and smiles. My life has to be a dream waking up next to you every day. I can't help a tiny blush from spreading across my face. It's small, but it's there. She sees my reaction and moves her face closer. I catch on, and I move mine forward, and as I do, our lips meet, and we share a morning kiss. Not something we've done before. We move our lips in slow unison. She eventually closes her eyes to enjoy it more, and I follow suit. After a few more seconds, we both pull away for some air. We open our eyes and look at each other. She brings her hand up and rubs it along my cheek and through my hair. The feeling of her fingernails gliding across my skin gives me goosebumps. We should get up, shouldn't we? We both know that the moment couldn't last forever, but we're glad that it did happen. I smile at her and nod. I lean up and roll my neck around. It pops in multiple places, and I release a sigh. I'm starving. I chuckle as Sally is more energetic than normal after waking up. Despite the fact we stayed up pretty late. We exit the tent, and we sit by the long extinguished campfire. I pull some food and clean water out of my inventory and give some to her. I take my portion and start to dig in. The reality of the situation is starting to set in. I can see it on Sally's face. She's never been to the Elven Kingdom and has never met her family before. They shouldn't even be called that. We eat in silence and watch the slowly rising sun over the field, warming everything up as its light touches all that it can reach. There's something humbling and mesmerizing about a rising sun. It's a sign that you've made it another day, and you still have a long way to go before that final sunrise. We finish eating our food, and I quickly pack up the tent. I turn towards her as I toggle my wings on, and I kneel so she can get on. She climbs on and gets comfortable. This is one of my favorite things to do. She whispers into my ear as I flex my wings and fly fast towards the clouds after launching off the ground. The next stop is the southern border into the Elven Kingdom. While Sarah and Sally finish the last stretch of their trip to the southern border, Hayley and Jasmine are walking themselves to their new destination. There is a problem that Hayley is facing, though. She doesn't know how to broach the subject of her little brother being the angel everyone adores. She knows Jasmine is a devoted follower of the Church of Light, but she isn't sure how she will react around Sarah. To everyone not from Earth, Sarah is something many would consider a god. He's anything but that, and Hayley is sure that Sarah thinks the same thing. We walk along the path, and I'm deep in my thoughts. Jasmine doesn't know that Slayer's Earn is Sarah, and Sarah is my brother. Many things are being spoken about in terms of my brother. One of them being he's a merciful and kind person. He can be, but if everyone saw how brutal he is, they'd have second thoughts. I do not want this to affect Jasmine negatively. However, I have bigger concerns to think about the dungeon we're taking on before we're getting to the southern border. There have been new developments regarding that. I intend to have Jasmine receive the legacy class in the dungeon. The only problem is there are millions of other players also trying to clear the dungeon. It's an incredibly hard one, but I'm worried a guild will come along and take it before we can even get there. The dungeon is large enough to allow an entire guild to challenge it. If you want to solo it, you can. But no one's ever completed something like that before. I have yet to try, and I highly doubt Sarah has given a dungeon like that a go. I look over at Jasmine, and I can visibly see how much happier she is now. I didn't know how large of an effect killing the James family would have. She's so much brighter now. There's something we need to discuss. I get straight to the point, and Jasmine looks at me from the side as we walk. We discussed you getting a legacy class, and I know where one is. The only problem is there are going to be lots of people going after it too. So there's a chance we might not even get a chance at it. She looks forward again and nods calmly. Jasmine is strong right now, but all she has is a rare class. She could be so much more if we got her something better. That's fine, Hayley. In total honesty, it's not like us getting that class for me is ride or die. I still want to give it a shot, but if it's already gone, then I'm okay with that too. In town, I heard whispers of a world boss near the border of Creshina. Maybe that'll have something if the dungeon doesn't. I smile and place my hand on top of Jasmine's head as we walk. She's great at finding things out. Who knows, we might hit that world boss. I don't mind letting my brother wait. Chapter 284, First Attack. While there are many things going on around Gaia, the war brewing between Belvia and the alliance of the Dryads and Zenith is heating up. The first moves are being made, and both sides are preparing to take losses and progress their side's win. Belvia has an advantage that its opponents don't have, and that's home field. The same can be said for Zenith and the Dryads. They have greater numbers and more experienced soldiers and commanders. Queen Eleanor is at the site of the first actual battle. Despite it not being between the actual parties in the war, my soldiers and Zenith's soldiers are present in the location we need to capture for a foothold. I'm present at this battle cause I want to know how battles are fought. If the monsters in the area prove to be too deadly, I'll use the horn of the forest and save some unnecessary deaths from occurring. I ride on a horse next to a general of Zenith and a couple from mine. Jackson is on his way with some of his forces to help secure other locations. The trade routes and the ports are his main concern. We have plenty of soldiers on our side. I'm traveling with only a couple of battalions, while our combined armies have up to 55 battalions. So it's rather small compared to the majority of our forces. Jackson is using around 8 battalions for his assault in 2 trade routes. Other generals with separate objectives have taken battalions too. Some generals are taking 3 battalions, and others are taking a large bout of 5 or 6. I'm moving with a small amount since we aren't engaging our actual enemies. We're taking over a strategic position from monsters. I've already learned much in my time traveling here. One of my generals is riding next to me as we're in the middle of our army. She's a great friend. One of my father's best and has always been a little overprotective of me. My queen, I still don't see how it's okay for you to join us in combat. I think you should have stayed back at the staging ground for our invasion of Belvia. There are a lot more soldiers there, and you'll be protected since it's going to move. I smile at the care she shows me, but I'm not some baby that can't care for itself. Before I can respond, the general of Jackson's army begins to laugh out loud. Celia darts her head at the general, but it's not a laugh to be offended by. It's not one filled with arrogance. It has a tone of sincerity in it. I don't see a problem with it, Queen Eleanor. I'd be jumping for joy that the leader of my land is willing to learn how to fight and win battles at such a young age. You don't see that in young rulers anymore, and you're going to be better off along with your people, so I admire that you're here. As the general explains his reasoning, Celia turns her head away and looks down. She didn't consider looking at it that way. As Queen Eleanor approaches the area, King Jackson is making progress himself. In fact, he has finally engaged the enemy. The trade route that he's attacking is of a more important role, and that's why he has the most soldiers with him out of all the leaders moving on the offensive side. The trade route he is attacking is important because it delivers supplies and weapons to key cities and encampments. It's also a trade route that leads straight to the port. Taking this trade route will lock down any help that Belvia will need. I watch from behind my men as the front lines of both sides clash. We outnumber the forces here by 2 to 1, but their mages are causing serious problems for us. None of my soldiers can make it to the mages, and the range of my archers' arrows isn't as far as they are in their ranks. They're behind some wooden fortifications and attacking us with long-distance magic. My king. We need to do something about these mages. They're tearing our troops apart. A commanding officer from the front lines runs up on a horse. He tells me something I can see from here. I was hoping I didn't have to use this, but sometimes you got to do things you don't like. Tell the archer to start using the magic nullifying arrows. Once they make contact in the general area of those mages, they won't be able to cast magic. I shout my order, and the chain of command sees that it's handled. These arrow types cost me a small fortune, which I hoped I didn't have to use. However, this is war. The archers get new barrels with these arrows, and they start to launch them at the mages. They fly longer and farther than normal arrows. Hence why we can use them. I watch as the arrows release a small gas as they hit the area the mages are in. After a couple of seconds, the magical assault stops. Tell the line breakers to use their skills and punch a hole into their defensive line. My order is sent, and my front-line soldiers use their skill defensive break. After a brief struggle, my men get through, and my soldiers flood into the enemy forces now that their front line is broken. I watch as Belvia's forces get slaughtered. I do feel bad. These men are pawns in a game that they shouldn't have been dragged in. After a few minutes, the fighting is over, and the few left on Belvia's side either flee or are captured. Some of the mages managed to escape, but we ended up catching a couple of them. I walk into the wooden fort they used as a defensive position. I can see that they were well supplied. It doesn't matter anymore. Any places that need reinforcements beyond this point won't get any help since we've captured the second most important target in this war. I know Belvia has more up its sleeve. More than I'm sure will cost me more men. As Jackson finishes the final things before securing the trade route. News of the capture has already reached both Jackson and the Dryads' forces and Belvia's forces. This marks the first attack on the war, and it means that this is serious and will only escalate at this point onwards. However, there is a single man that is happy all of this is occurring. The true orchestrator of this war is Gregory. He's the one that enticed Belvia's king to attack Jackson's wife with assassins and thieves. He's the one that let the information slip that it was Belvia doing all this. I sit on my throne as a messenger walks in. He hands me a paper scroll, and I open it. It's news about the war in Belvia. Jackson humiliated me and my work building the coalition, nearly destroying it in a single day. My king, when should we move on with the next step of the plan? We can't move forward with the plan yet. Jackson needs to be at the height of the war in Belvia before I can make my move. Belvia has been playing its role greatly, and everything is going according to my designs. It's almost foolproof. The only thing I couldn't guarantee is Belvia's king staying stupid long enough before he finds out I played him. The odds are low, but if that happens, my plans will have a good chance of failure. Not yet. We have to make sure the Zenith is at its most vulnerable before we control the kingdom. With the majority of its forces in Belvia, it'll be easy to take the kingdom. I have been planning this since Jackson left the coalition. I'm going to absorb his kingdom into mine and take him off his throne. Yes, I'm doing this out of spite and pride, but I'm more important than Jackson is. Who is he to stand in the way of my plans? A small-time king in a small-time kingdom. As you wish, my king. When you're ready to give the order, we'll move out the armies and take Zenith by storm. Zenith won't have its king and won't have its greater forces. Taking it will be easy. My advisor leaves the throne room and lets me sit alone. I close my eyes and think back to the moment he left the coalition. The arrogance he had, the gall. No one ever behaves like that in front of me. Towards me. He'll only learn the truth too late. Chapter 285, Fears from Revelations. While the war in Belvia continues to progress, Sarah and Sally are finishing the last stretch of their journey. The southern border of the Elven Kingdom is closing in fast, and they'll be the first of the group to arrive. They'll have to wait for Hayley and Jasmine to catch up, but this is the first time they'll have a stretch of rest time that is longer than a day. The amount of time and effort put into the current quests is coming closer and closer to fruition. Once inside the Elven Kingdom, they'll be on the home stretch for Sally's revenge. I flap my wings and blast through the air. I look ahead of us, and I see a massive wall heading in opposite directions. At the entrance, there's a city. I bring us down slowly a good 5 to 6 miles away from the city. Once landed, Sally hops off and dusts herself off. You've been really quiet for the last stretch of the trip. You okay telling me what's wrong? To begin with, Sally isn't a big talker, but we do have nice conversations that I enjoy when we fly. She has been quiet since we've left this morning. She looks up from the ground and stares me in the eyes. She wants to talk about it, but she's having a hard time getting it out. I was just thinking the things that you shared with me, they're incredible and hard to believe if what you say is true, then you're not really Amelia's son. She's put it together. I knew she'd put it together once I told her about the history of my people. It's been weighing on me, the origin of new people players. It bothers me, it makes me feel insignificant. I don't really know what to say. She could be changing her mind about traveling with me, about doing any of this. I step away from her, and as I do, she looks at me with a worried look. I understand if you're scared of me now. If you don't want anything to do with me, the truth can open people's eyes and change their opinions. I get that you don't want to be with me any. The next thing I know, I'm getting slapped across the face. I don't budge, and I don't take any damage, but it happened nonetheless. I look at Sally, and I see her on the verge of tears. I said something I shouldn't have. Those words add fuel to the fire. She balls up her fists and proceeds to strike at me. Don't you dare say any of that. I could never be scared of you. What idiotic thought in your head made you think I didn't want you around anymore? She's going off, and as she is, she's releasing her power in the process. The area around us is getting cold and starting to freeze. I can't imagine my life without you. You idiot. She lays one final punch against my chest. None of it hurt physically. She starts to cry and leans her face into my chest. She hugs me, and I hesitantly hug her back. She feels my hesitation, and she squeezes me harder. This better not change anything between us. She talks through sobs and gasps for air. Her words say one thing, but her actions say another. She looks scared to talk to me, to bring the subject up. I feel like she's holding in her fear and pretending it's not there, in an attempt to make sure everything is all right between us. I stop hugging her, and I grab her shoulder. I push her away as I step back. I look at her face, and it's pure pain at my action. She isn't truthful with me. She is trying to cover up her fear. She reaches out her hand, but I raise mine and step back. I have an expressionless face. We're not doing that. I'm not going to help you pretend you're not afraid of the truth. Until you're ready to talk about this, to get it all out. We're not going to be more than friends. So the ball is in your court. I turn around and start walking away. She's standing there, speechless. I'm not going to let her fear be buried away. I want to talk about it and handle it so she doesn't fear me. She's in a weird place where she loves and is scared of me. I'm not going to be in a relationship with her if she's scared of me. So until we handle that, we're only friends. Please, I'm sorry for pretending I'm scared of you, Sarah. I'm scared of what other things you're hiding from me. I stop, and I stand still. She has reacted far quicker than I thought. I didn't think she'd be willing to talk so soon. I turn around, and I see her tears falling and pain-stricken face. I don't want to lose you, lose what we've gained so far. I stay silent as I listen to her. And I have a lot to talk about. I'm glad that she's decided not to wait. While Sarah and Sally talk about what Sarah revealed to her, Hayley and Jasmine are still traveling to the dungeon with a legacy class in it. They're about an hour away from it, and the area the dungeon is located is around 7 or 8 miles from a city. Hayley knows that this is going to make the trip longer, but it's necessary. She doesn't really care about making Sarah wait. They are still brother and sister. Causing inconveniences for one another is part of being siblings. The current road they're walking on has lots of foot traffic. I look over to Jasmine, and I can tell she's excited. Even though there is a chance the legacy class doesn't exist, we're going to have fun going for it. I know no one has received the class yet since a world announcement hasn't gone off informing players and NPCs that one has been found. The world announcements for them are rare and far in between. The last one I heard was a while ago. Are you sure your brother won't mind us taking extra time to handle this? I don't want to make a bad impression on one of your family members. I couldn't care less about Sarah's thoughts. Regarding how long we take, that is. I'm not completely dismissive of my brother. He'll be fine, Jasmine. Just be excited that we actually get to have a shot at this thing. No one has got it yet, which means we'll have a great chance of doing so. You'll actually have a legacy class if everything goes right. She smiles with plenty of teeth as I say that. She's more than happy to have a class better than the one she has. She's reached her potential with the class she has. I know she'll be one of the strongest people I've met once we get her that legacy class. We're getting closer and closer to the city up ahead. The foot traffic outside the city and on this road is already great. The number of players that are currently in the general area must be huge. I bet most are at the dungeon giving it their shots too. There is one thing that worries me, though. Jasmine can't respawn as I can. She isn't a player. That means if she dies, she stays dead. My insides churn at the thought of that. Remember, we have to be careful and take our time. I've heard that it's filled with powerful monsters, and many don't come out alive. I'm capable of protecting her. Being surrounded by monsters is another thing. I can move at incredible speeds, but I don't know if I'll be able to cut through monsters that are between her and me. There are supposed to be lots of them. All are strong and capable of one-shotting players that aren't strong enough. I know. You're always so worried. I'm pretty good at fighting too, you know. Her sarcastic edge makes me smile. We're closing in on the city, which means we have some time to prepare today before we give it a shot. Hopefully, we can knock it out before night. We walk through the gates of the city, and we've already planned on staying the night here. I'd like to sleep in an actual bed instead of the cold ground. I look around as we walk, and there are plenty of players all around. Some are bargaining at stalls, and others are gathering to form raiding parties. The sights almost make you forget that this is our new reality and home. Almost. Chapter 286, The Wish Dungeon. Jasmine and I walk through the city and make it to an inn. Since we're going to be staying till tomorrow, we might as well get a room all set up and ready. There are a lot of new people. Word travels fast. How many do you think are on their way here right now? Jasmine brings a good point. Since the city doesn't have any teleportation gate, the only way to get here is by foot or by airship. The dungeon was discovered a little over a week ago. Since then, many players have been migrating to this city. The city's name is Rimoma. I don't know much about the history of the city. The name of the dungeon is called the Wish Dungeon. My brother would be endlessly curious about the dungeon. He might actually know more about it than the average person. I'm willing to bet there is going to be even more tomorrow than there is today. That being said, we should give the dungeon a shot as soon as possible. We have lots of daylight left, and I'd like to see if the dungeon is as hard as they say it is. Word has been going around that even guilds can't beat the dungeon. That's a lot of power that can't do anything. Most guilds don't have players with classes above epic grade. I'm going into this dungeon with a legendary class. I'm confident that I can wipe out an entire guild if provoked. I'm so confident I'd call it a fact. I take that as soon as we reserve a room, we're heading straight for the dungeon. I nod my head, confirming Jasmine's words. We enter the inn that doesn't have many players, and I walk up to the counter and pay for a room key. The owner treats us like most new people get treated these days. I'm severely overcharged, but it's a drop in the bucket for me. We walk up to the room and enter with the key. I take a look around, and it's not the best of accommodations. It's not like we get a choice on where to stay. Now that we have a room, we can go and check out the dungeon. I think it'd be smart to ask some of the players that are waiting outside the dungeon. They'll likely know everything that's going on inside. I only have a little bit of information. I explain the plan to Jasmine, and she agrees. Having the information on what's inside can save us a lot of time. It also lowers the risk of either of us getting hurt. I'm fine if I do end up taking damage, but Jasmine is the one at real risk here. My speed is going to keep me from getting hurt. I move so fast time slows down. If none of the monsters in the dungeon can move at that speed, then it's going to be easy for me to handle this. Are we going to get any potions or special items before we go in? Jasmine starts talking about something I didn't really consider. There is one thing I'd like to get before we head into the dungeon. I turn to Jasmine as we stand in the bedroom. There is one thing I'd like to get. We'll stop off at a magical item shop and pick up an emergency exit scroll if it gets too dangerous in there. You're going to use the scroll to exit the dungeon. We'll plan for this scenario. I'd rather be safe than sorry. Jasmine takes on a thinking expression. Not one that she usually has. What is it? She's a very smart person, and I can't tell you how many times I've made adjustments to my plans from some of the ideas she's had. 2 brains are better than 1. I have to ask her one more time, and she finally decides to include me. I was just playing with the idea of piggybacking on a group or guild. While going in ourselves is an option, there are no rules that prevent new people from killing each other in dungeons. We can go in with a guild or group, pretending to be weak or on their side. When the time comes, we can kill them and take the legacy class for ourselves. The worst that'll happen is they'll respawn, right? It's a rather devious idea, and on that I like. There is one problem. Who is going to be willing to let 2 strangers in? It's definitely something to consider. When we get to the actual dungeon and see how many are attempting to clear it, I'll try and see if this plan is a possibility. That's something I didn't consider, and I really like it. Despite how devious it is. I watch a blush spread across Jasmine's face. She's embarrassed that she had such an idea, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I have no problems with pulling a fast one on a guild or a group of players. PvP exists in games for a reason, and that still exists here despite everything that's changed. Now that we have a game plan, we should get a move on. I make my way towards the door, and I exit the room. I hold the door open, waiting for Jasmine. She exits too, and I lock the door behind us. I place the room key in my inventory, and we make our way out of the inn and onto the street. The first stop is the magical item shop. I saw one on our way down here, and many players were going in and out of it. Do you think that the shop owner would overcharge you like everywhere else? Jasmine has come to resent people who overcharge new people. I don't respond and instead, point towards the shop. You can tell when a shop isn't overpricing players by the number of players shopping there. All the other open stores around it aren't getting any customers. That means this is the only shop that has reasonable prices. Whoever the owner is has a good business mind. We walk into the shop after we reach it. Once inside, I look and see countless magical items, gear, and potions. All of them are at prices that many would consider normal and fair. I walk towards the emergency scroll section. I pick up the closest one, and I head straight for the counter. There is a considerable line, but it shouldn't be that long before we get to the front. Jasmine stands beside me. She's a couple of inches shorter than I am. I'm average height for a woman. She's on the petite side of size. 2 pretty little things right in front of us for the taking? Must be our lucky day. I have to resist releasing a sigh. Jasmine freezes up, and it makes me mad. Jasmine has a fear of aggressive men like the ones behind us. It's from her past as a slave. I turn around, and I look at the men, and as I do, Emerald pokes her head out of my backpack. Sensing my anger and wanting to see what's up. I'm only going to say this once. If you don't walk out of this store right now, I'm going to kill you both. It's a pair of guys. They look like brothers. They start laughing. It's their own fault for not taking this seriously. I don't hesitate, and I draw my sword at imperceptible speeds. I slash their necks, and I put my sword back in its sheath before time speed back up. Their heads fall off with smiles still on their faces. After a couple of seconds, their bodies disappear. They're respawning right about now, and I don't think they're going to be coming back here. I'm sorry, Jasmine apologizes, and I'm starting to feel bad now. There are some things that I won't tolerate. Harassment is one of them. I'm not going to let some random guys talk to Jasmine or me like that. I reach over and place my hand on top of her head. I give her a reassuring nod. I can't control it when something like that happens. I have terrible flashbacks. I know all about Jasmine's past. Every detail. She suffered an incredible amount of abuse. Being a slave, she had no rights, no opinions. She wasn't allowed to resist, and she was treated like an object. Spoken to as if she was a possession. You don't need to be sorry, Jasmine. The world is filled with scum like those guys, and it's okay to retaliate violently. Sometimes, it's the only thing scum understands. Pursuing peaceful solutions is all well and good. However, peace and compromise don't work for everyone. There are people out there who only understand violence, and you have to be violent with them. Chapter 287, The Wish Dungeon 2. We make it to the front of the line, and I purchase the emergency exit scroll. The owner of this store will be making a lot of money that his competition is losing out on because of personal grudges. Let's get out of here and head for that dungeon. I start walking towards the exit as I finish talking, and Jasmine is right behind me. We exit the store, and it's time to head for the dungeon. The next part of our plan is to ask the people waiting at the dungeon for information. They'll know what's inside and what we should expect. We start walking down the street towards the exit that leads to the dungeon. It's a bit off the city, so it will be a bit of a walk. Do you really think there will be people willing to share what they've found out? I wouldn't be surprised if some of them asked for money regarding things they know. Jasmine has come to learn that new people, or players, have a greedy streak. The majority of the time, we won't do things or share information without compensation. I'm not willing to pay obscene amounts of money for a little information. Finding the right person to talk to for the right price is important. Players are really good at swindling each other. That depends on who we talk to, and it's going to be a bit of a problem when it comes to finding that right person. Not to mention we still have the option of finding a group or guild to accompany us. If we can find a group willing, we won't have to pay for information. They'll just have it. There are multiple ways we can take this situation on. I'm warming up to the idea of tagging along with a group of players. We can make them do all the heavy lifting. Once we get to the boss room and learn about its attacks and how dangerous it is, I can dispose of them and finish the boss myself. Securing the legacy class for Jasmine at the same time. The other option is going in with just the two of us. It's more dangerous, though. We won't have to play backup and backstab for other people. Each option has its pros and cons. I don't think it was a good idea to say my suggestion back then. I chuckle as Jasmine mimics regret for suggesting betrayal of who we follow in. While Hayley and Jasmine make their way towards the dungeon, Sarah and Sally are in the city attached to the border. Sally has confessed all her fears and worries regarding the truth that was revealed to her. They did the responsible thing and talked about the issues between each other. Sarah came to learn that Sally was afraid that everything Sarah had come to tell her was a lie. About Amelia being his mom, about Hayley being his sister. Most importantly, about him wanting to help her. They've talked it through, and both have had a weight lift off them. I'm glad that Sally decided to talk about it right away. I now know her fears and worries regarding the things I've told her. Instead of letting it all fester inside her, we've discussed it. This place sure is huge. I listen as Sally whispers about the site in front of us. The city attached to the border is giant, and while it's not owned by the elves, they run security here. We walk through the massive gates that lead into the city. I can see some players here and there, but it's mostly natives of Gaia. They're elves and humans. I see the occasional dwarf too. The Elven Kingdom is one of the largest and wealthiest kingdoms in all of Gaia. Not to mention their powerful magic and vast armies. It'd take multiple countries coming together to defeat the Elven Kingdom. I've never been here before, and neither have you. I do wish it could be under better circumstances. I know very little of the Elven Kingdom. They hide their secrets better than anyone. It's probably why they've lasted so long. I'm speaking true, I've never been here, and my knowledge of the future lacks when it comes to elves. The Elven Kingdom has connections all over Gaia, and they also have countless spies and intelligent officers planted in other kingdoms. I'm not excited to see my supposed homeland. It can burn for all I care. Sally and I agree with her statement. While the Elven Kingdom is a major player in the war against the monsters, it's not entirely for the good of everyone. After all, the church promised my hand in marriage without my consent. As if they had the authority to do that. I'm glad that this is going to be a one-time trip. Sally crosses her arms, and I can hear the anger in her voice. I reach over and wrap one arm around her. She's a little surprised, but she relaxes into my grasp. It's going to be okay. We're here for one reason, to get revenge. Once we're done with that, we'll leave and never return. Think about the end results, not the journey there. I'm a person that believes the means do justify the end. While many would disagree, I'm not a conformed. I don't conform to others' beliefs and morals. I respect them, but I won't change mine to make you happy. Sally stays quiet at my words. We should find a good place to stay while we wait for Hayley. While Sarah and Sally find a place to stay until Hayley and Jasmine get back. Hayley and Jasmine are walking up to the dungeon right now. They come to see just how many people are trying to group up and take it on. There are people shouting level requirements and the number of people still needed for their raiding party. The sheer number of people here is overwhelming, and it's only going to get bigger until the dungeon is beaten and the legacy class is taken. A goal that the players here are hoping they accomplish first. Jasmine walks at my side as we slowly navigate through the seemingly endless amount of players. We're making our way to the entrance of the dungeon. There isn't a limit to how many people can enter a dungeon. One group can go in, and another can follow right after. They'll have different instances and won't come into contact with one another. When we get to the dungeon entrance, we'll ask for information that we need. Jasmine nods her head, and I hold onto her wrist so we don't get separated in the ocean of players. After about a half hour of struggling to get to the dungeon entrance, we set eyes upon it. There are countless heavily armed players and guilds talking to each other before they go in. They're discussing the dungeon and what to expect. I move closer to one of the guild raiding parties. I'm going to get some free information. What we know is the number of monsters is increased compared to other dungeons at this level requirement. Several mini-bosses deal heavy amounts of damage that can take out multiple people. Talk about a broad dungeon. He isn't done explaining to his group yet. The boss is the real challenge of this dungeon. Her name is Polera, the Witch Queen. What we know about her is very little. Our best lore diggers and scribes have found only her history after Polera became the Witch Queen. That isn't a title. Something comes by easily. You have to have a lot of power for something like that. This dungeon is the real deal. I wonder how many players total have died trying to clear this? I'm willing to bet it's over 10,000 at this point. Jasmine stands right at my side as he continues to describe. There are going to be countless traps and false paths. The tricky part is they're never the same. Every time you enter, they'll be different. So I'm expecting that some of us will die when we encounter this. The guild will compensate anyone who dies after respawning in the city. Are there any questions? None of the guild members taking part in the dungeon raid raise their hands. So I decide to raise mine. The person who's leading this raid gives me a funny look. But he nods his head for me to ask anyway. Chapter 288, The Wish Dungeon 3. The group's leader is waiting for me to ask what I want to ask. How long will it take to reach the boss? Dungeons differ in length and duration. Some of them even have time limits, and if you go past that time limit, you'll wipe and be sent to the outside. The members all look at the group leader, and I see him open his player menu, likely looking for the information written down in the player journal. It's definitely a nice feature to have. He looks up from his player interface and shakes his head. That's disappointing. I sigh and fold my arms. I'd like to know how long this dungeon is going to take. Is there any chance you know where the legacy class is? If the boss even drops it. 'Cause if you don't get it from the boss, that means it's in a different location in the dungeon. I've come to learn a lot from going into dungeons and fighting by myself. Everyone is looking at the group leader. He shakes his head, and that ends any questions that I have. People have been going into this dungeon blind without the slightest clue where the legacy class actually is. The leader of this group clears his throat and rolls his neck. Indeed, we don't know this important information, but that doesn't mean we don't have a chance of getting the legacy class. All the known information is enough to get to the boss room. The hardest part about this dungeon is the fact that it changes. Paths to the boss aren't the same. It makes it quicker or longer. This is betting a lot on very little. These players are risking their levels and aren't really getting anything in return other than gold. None of them are getting the legacy class. I wonder if they've even considered that they stand to gain nothing other than some gold and reputation bonus within the guild. If any of them knew what they were doing, none of them would be here. I step away from the group with Jasmine by my side. This is going to make things a little more complicated. From what I know, the best group to go in with is the one that's been in it the most. What are we going to do? Are we going in ourselves or going in with another group? Jasmine reminds me that we still have a decision to make. While Hayley and Jasmine try to decide what to do, the war in Belvia is progressing bit by bit as time goes by. Belvia has successfully moved its troops into the remaining important locations. However, Zenith and the Dryads have already captured very important locations. The war is at a cold low point, getting ready to heat up again. Jackson is at the new foothold that was secured by Queen Eleanor and her forces, along with one of his generals. It's another important location that's been captured. There are many discussions happening around me, but I'm in my own head. I have a bad feeling about this war, something that's going on I haven't prepared for. I close my eyes and really consider Gregory's role in this war. He's a supposed ally of Belvia, but he isn't here helping defend. I don't know what he's planning, but I have to go with my intuition. I'm going to have to ask a big favor of Queen Eleanor. I need to discuss something with everyone. My voice breaks through the conversations, and the attention of the room falls on me. I open my eyes, and everyone can see the serious look in them. I have a big favor to ask of you, Queen Eleanor. She looks at me and prepares to hear my request. I have a feeling that Gregory is planning something, one that'll change the tide of this war. I want you to take all your forces and 1/4 of mine and head to the capital of Zenith. Gregory might be planning an attack on my kingdom while I'm preoccupied with the conflict here. There is silence around the room. I watch Eleanor and try to get an answer from reading her perspective. I'd defend my kingdom myself, but the Dryads can't win the war here. Not with our help. I can do this for you, Gregory, but I want something in return. There is always a price when it comes to war. I nod my head, and she straightens up. I want a 50-50 split of the winning of this war. While Belvia doesn't have much to take, they still have way more than we do. I want to bolster my kingdom's armory. That isn't an unreasonable request. Splitting the winning right down the middle. I smile and nod my head in confirmation. Some of my generals disagree, but they're only generals. Queen Eleanor and I both shake hands, and she begins to gather her forces in one fouth of mine. I'd rather be safe than sorry. The meeting continues and goes off without a hitch. We've planned out how to attack and take the next targets. I leave the tent that the meeting is being held in, and I make my way towards my private tent. I walk in, and I see Tessa sleeping on the bed. She's actually sleeping for the first time and I don't even know. Weeks? Moving such great distances and staying up for days at a time has really messed up my internal clock. While Queen Eleanor moves the forces, she's in charge of to the Kingdom of Zenith. Hayley and Jasmine are making their way into the dungeon right behind a group of players that have given the dungeon multiple runs. They're not the best group, but they've seen most of the encounters and mini-bosses so far. Only one group has made it to the boss room so far and hasn't since. Hayley and Jasmine are in the back and basically running bitch. They're only there to help when it gets really tough. Hayley was smart and didn't inform them of her level. The group we're running with right now is decently leveled and geared out. Jasmine and I have decided once we make it to the boss room and defeat her, we'll eliminate this group and take the winnings for ourselves. While wrong and crude, it's common. I'm not above playing dirty, and I prefer to be underhanded if I'm honest. It's one of the best ways to win the majority of the time. However, it goes both ways. Once the boss is defeated, I do not doubt in my mind they'll try and do the same to us. Jasmine walks beside me, and we're quiet as we make the initial descent into the beginning of the dungeon. The first encounter is through the door down this staircase. It's a bunch of monsters, and all of them have high defense ratings and can kill you in 3 hits if you're not careful. Everyone, drink the speed enhancement potions once we make it to the door. I don't want anyone on this team getting hit. The group leader, Victor, starts repeating the plan that I've heard him go over 3 times for this first part. You can hear a thick Russian accent when he speaks. How he's with us Americans is something only he can answer. My best guess, he was living in the US and playing the game when we all got transported here. Newbies. We both look towards him as he walks. You two will help rotate from attacking and defending, and Felicia will give you some speed boost potions so you can keep up with us. If that's the plan, I'm fine with it. Jasmine and I can hold our own. If things do start to get too sticky, Jasmine will use the emergency exit scroll. We make it to the bottom of the stairs, and we all gather in front of the door. Everyone starts to drink their potions, and Felicia hands us some. We both drink it, and since everyone has finished their potions, Victor pushes the door open. I look at the monsters on the other side, and they look like half flesh and half wood monsters. They give off a terrible smell. Everyone draws their weapons, and Jasmine and I do the same. It's time to get this show on the road. Hopefully, we can get this dungeon cleared by nightfall. I'd love to sleep in that bed at the inn. Chapter 289, The Wish Dungeon 4. We've spent the last 5 hours fighting through this dungeon, and we're currently at the part where you have to traverse multiple pathways. Science says that splitting up and trying multiple paths at once is the smart thing to do, but this dungeon is rigged with traps. We've encountered more than I'd like to in any dungeon. This is the part that takes the most lives out of everyone who comes in here. The many attempts that I've done have taught me something. The group leader, Victor, begins to debrief us on what to expect, but I have a good idea already. He turns around to all of us and takes a breath to finish explaining. Not all of us will make it through. There are too many paths and too many traps. I've been in the dungeon with large groups and small ones. The number of paths and traps adapt to the number of players that are still alive once we get this far. The dungeon is going to try and weaken our forces by at least 50%, but I want to make sure it doesn't go below 20. There is one more boss before the actual Witch Queen, and it's after we get through the upcoming maze filled with traps. Jasmine and I have been faring better than everyone else in the group. It's really hard to hide the difference in power, but I'm doing my best. Their suspicions haven't been raised too high, but I can tell Victor is keeping an eye on us. I'm betting he's planning the same thing we are. Taking out everyone here will be easy, but I want to get to the boss room and battle the boss before I have to kill any of them. We'll split up into groups of 5. There are 20 of us left, so let's push through this and take multiple paths. Remember, keep your eyes peeling for traps. It seems he's going with that method. Jasmine and I find a group to travel with, and I like the idea that we can split up from Victor. I don't want him watching our every move after this point. Hopefully, he dies in the maze. He's a fantastic leader who's observant, and I don't want him ruining our plan by blowing our cover early or trying to take us out on the way there. How long do you think this dungeon is going to take? At this point I can hear the tiredness in Jasmine's voice, and I feel the echoes of exhaustion setting on me too. I'm looking forward to the next time I get to rest. I smile as I follow behind the leader of this new smaller group. The leader's name is Cliff. He's very quiet and pretty good. However, he lacks the power of a good class to utilize his talent. We follow down one of the paths and stay in the back of the group. Every 20 steps or so, we have to stop so Cliff can check for traps. I think it's going to be a few more hours until we finish this. Let's try and enjoy this time to energize for the upcoming fight. The sheer length and difficulty of this dungeon have caused many problems for every player that's tried. While Hayley and Jasmine continue their journey deeper and deeper into the dungeon, Sarah and Sally are winding down in the room they've secured for a few days in an inn. Luckily, the city that the border is attached to has a bank in it. Sarah is now loaded with money, and he'll be able to pay for what they need until the next time they run out of money. The inn room is cozy and warm. It has a fireplace to heat the room. The Elven Kingdom is notoriously cold. Elves are unaffected by it, and so is Sally due to her class and status as a half-breed. Sally and I sit in front of the fire on the ground. She's cuddled up next to me, and we're just looking into the fire. We could sit in chairs, but she said she wanted to be close to me. She's been quiet ever since we got into the room. Only saying things here and there. She isn't a chatterbox, but she does like to entertain the silence with some conversation. You definitely have something on your mind. You can tell me if you want. The air is clear between us. We had a long talk about all the things she was scared of regarding the truth I revealed to her. I'm glad we handled that when we did. She hums lightly and wiggles next to me. I was just in my head thinking about all the things we have to do here across the border. I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be able to go after the Elven royal family for what they've done. She has some time to reflect and think about her life. I do that from time to time myself. Mostly what I'm going to say when I see them. If I should say anything at all, do I just kill them, or make them feel regret for all the things they've done? I spend my time thinking about similar things. Some wronged me still out there, one man I truly hate and will torture before I take his life. She's doing the same thing I do. Did I ever tell you about the story for the Fairy Kingdom? I ask her a question that isn't pertaining to our situation at all. She slowly shakes her head. Long ago, the Fairy Kingdom was the main place for the wounded to go for care in the First Great War. The mortal world was under siege by the 7 kings of the underworld. I can tell that the story is slowly drawing her attention in. I know all about this. I learned it once I freed the Holy Willow Tree and the fairies were brought back from my actions. One of these 7 fell madly in love with the fairy princess, so much that he wanted to have her all to himself. No matter how much she was repulsed by him. Leviathan laid siege to the Fairy Kingdom but ultimately failed against the mighty Fenrir. The beast of Ragnarok decimated Leviathan's forces, and he lost that day. Before he returned in defeat, he put a curse on the Holy Willow Tree using some of his own life force. She's now fully invested in the story. I take a breath and look into the fire deeply as if I'm there, watching. This was a last desperate attempt to make sure no one got the fairy princess. By cursing the holy willow tree, he cursed Fenrir. Fenrir is connected to the holy willow tree. Once the holy willow tree was put to sleep, so was Fenrir. All the fairies died without the magical energy supporting them from the holy willow tree. Soon, the fairy kingdom was a forgotten legend. This is all old information to me. This is what I learned after I freed the holy willow tree from its curse. Sally is silent at my side, and I know her mind is away from those dark thoughts now. When I heard from the church that you freed the fairies from their curse, I had no idea they even existed at one point. Why'd you tell me this story? Is there some sort of meaning behind it? It kind of came out of nowhere. I've already succeeded in distracting her from those depressing things. Even if it's for the briefest of moments, it does help. I smile and wrap my arm around her and give her an hug. She leans into me and closes her eyes. I open mine as my chin sits on her head. I told you this story, so would stop thinking about what you're going to do. Leave that for when the moment comes. Thinking about it now will only drive you crazy, and I don't want that for you. It'll lead to problems you didn't think were possible. As I say my reason, I feel her squeeze me harder between her arms. I hope that Hayley takes her time. Having this alone and relaxed time with Sally is something that I didn't know I needed. Whatever my sister's doing, it better be taking a long time. Chapter 290, The Wish Dungeon v. We've spent 2 hours navigating this maze of pathways, and we've lost one member of our group in the process. There are only 4 in our little pack now. The good news is we're the first ones at the door to the next boss. The others shouldn't be that far behind us. My concerns are what is going to happen when we reach the Witch Queen's boss room. Victor and his closest allies will try and get rid of Jasmine and me before the boss ends. I'm going to have to get rid of them before they try that for us. I'm confident Jasmine and I can take the boss on. After the next boss fight, I'll eliminate all the people other than Jasmine and me. We'll make our way to the Witch Queen's boss room and take her on ourselves. I have many powerful skills that can and will kill her. If we succeed, what are you going to do with your winnings? There's a chance that one of us might get the legacy class. One of the members of our group starts talking to another. Jasmine and I are off in our own little corner and patiently waiting for the rest to arrive. Jasmine is going to be the one to get the legacy class. I'm making sure of that. The amount of betrayals in dungeons is one of the main problems among the players. The only ones you can really trust are the ones in your guild. I've considered joining a guild before, but with my class, a lot of unwanted responsibility and pressure would be added. When you have a lot of power, people look to you for leadership and direction. It isn't something that I want in my life. I'm not a leader, and I'm not a team player. Jasmine is different cause she's my friend. Since I'm going to be getting rid of all these players, it's no better proof of how selfish I am. Being selfish doesn't mean I'm evil. How long do you think the other groups will be? I'm getting really tired and we still have one more boss to face before the Witch Queen. Jasmine yawns as she speaks. I'll agree that this is taking way too long. I never expected it to take this much time. It's almost deliberate. I'm willing to bet Victor is doing this on purpose so everyone that isn't his immediate friend will be easy to eliminate once this next boss battle is over. It's rather smart. Attacking when your opponents are weak and tired from dungeon diving. I lean against the wall and close my eyes. I'm going to relax since all we're doing is waiting. I don't know, Jasmine, we could be in here for another 6 to 7 hours. For all I know, it really depends on how fast we beat the next boss and the Witch Queen. Take a load off while you got a chance. Jasmine takes my advice and leans against the wall and slides down, and sits next to me. You want something to eat? I packed some food for the trip. While it won't be the best tasting, it'll fill both of us up. She nods her head with a hungry look. I pull the food out of my inventory with a smile and hand her some. I take another serving out for me. We both slowly start eating, and that's when I see the others in our group look over to us with hungry looks. I take it that none of you prepared for a long trip like this. They all nod their needs, confirming my words. I only have enough for my friend and me. Maybe next time, you'll prepare for a long dungeon dive. Their looks grow more desperate, but it does not affect Jasmine or me. It's their own fault, and it should be no reason to share with them. While Hayley and Jasmine wait for the rest of the dungeon party to arrive, there is much progress happening in the events regarding the war in Belvia. However, that isn't what this is about. Gregory has finally decided to move his troops towards Zenith. However, he's gotten reports from his spies that King Jackson has sent many of his forces back to Zenith. The Dryad Queen leading them. This has effectively thrown a wrench into Gregory's plans. He's currently sitting in his office and trying not to explode with rage. He's failing miserably. I slam my palms on my desk, and I shove the reports and papers off. God damn it! The many maids slightly cringe at my outburst. My butler at my side stays stoic, though. He's used to these moments. They've been happening way more frequently now. There is no way in hell the king of Belvia contacted Jackson. My spies would have intercepted and stopped anything like that from happening. That only means a few things could have happened. The first being that one or more of my spies have betrayed me. This is the most unlikely. The second is Jackson has anticipated something. He might have thought that this war was going too easy and decided to play it safe. The damn man guessed right that I was planning an attack, but he likely didn't know it was me. The third and most likely option is he's overconfident that he's won this war and has sent some of his troops home. These options all have chances of happening, and in my opinion, the third still is the greatest one that had a chance of happening. Would you like some refreshments, my lord? My butler breaks me out of my thoughts as I sit down. I nod my head slowly, and he waves his hand for the maids to prepare food and drinks. I lean back in my chair and release a long sigh. In the end, the coalition doesn't lose much. A severely weak Belvia wasn't going to be something I planned on keeping in the coalition. With their loss in this war, we're free of a burden. However, Zenith gains new territory and increases in pretty much everything. This is even better for Jackson than it is for me. That's the part that makes me the angriest. He's the one benefiting the most from this war. After a few minutes, the maids come back in with the food and drinks. They prepare it on my desk, and I'll admit the smell and look distracts me from my problems. A good hot meal can do that for you. I understand your frustration, my lord. Perhaps this is the best outcome in the end. The Dryads get their revenge, and Zenith will rid us of Belvia. The only thing you have to worry about is Belvia's king blabbering the truth is Jackson before he dies. That is the greatest loose end I have to fix. A simple assassination of the king will be the quickest way. However, this presents the problem of an easy victory for Jackson. I want him to waste his troops and come back weak from this war, but killing the enemy king will swiftly end the war. At the same time, it protects the secret that I was involved in the attacks on Jackson's wife. The choice here is obvious. I want you to head to the intelligence headquarters and have them eliminate the king of Belvia. His usefulness has completely run out. Time to protect our secrets. My butler nods his head and bows before leaving to go to the headquarters for the intelligence agency in my capital. That leaves me alone in my office. The maids left after they delivered the food. I stand up and walk over to the window overlooking the capital city. This is my kingdom, and I'm its king. I wonder what my citizens would think about the decisions and choices I've made. All the things that I've costed my great kingdom. All the sacrifices that I made the poor soldiers pay with their lives. I think they'd storm my castle and crucify me and parade my body through the streets. I have so many secrets that can lead to my demise and my kingdom's demise. I can only blame myself too. I got myself into this way of ruling. My father didn't teach me this, and I haven't taught my children. It's the way I am. I wonder what you would say, Father. I wonder what you'd do to me if you knew how rotten I've made the heart of your greatest masterpiece. There are echoes of pain and regret when I say those words. He cherished the kingdom more than his own family, which in retrospect is the correct way to rule. I'm not like him. I love myself and my family more than the kingdom. That makes me a terrible ruler but an excellent father and husband.